We're doing it by virtual communications, thanks to RingCentral. And yes, we're going to get closer. We're going to be eventually back in City Hall and be able to do it as we move along to phase 3. We're certainly hoping that county will stay that. We're going to have an update from Gary Jenkins about that in a few minutes. So right now, Dee, would you please take a roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Chapman.
Here.
Councilmember McCall.
Here.
Councilmember Parks.
Here.
Councilmember Records.
Here.
Councilmember Sorensen.
Here.
Councilmember Weller.
Present.
Councilmember Wright.
Here.
Under announcements tonight, Whitman County Comprehensive Plan Update. You can help plan the next 20 years by joining their virtual meeting tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. More information on how to join, just go to whitmancounty.org. Our comprehensive plan, as we've heard updates from RL Lott, is that it's moving along. We're going to hear from the Planning Commission. They're going to be talking about a schedule on their meeting, a special meeting coming up on March 17th. We have a proclamation that we would like to read tonight. Whereas March is American Red Cross Month, a special time to honor the kindness of our neighbors who aid families in need every day in Pullman and Whitman County across the United States and around the world. Whereas during the trying times of the coronavirus pandemic, people have stepped up to help others in need, whether it's responding to this year's record-breaking disasters across the country or rolling up their sleeves to give blood when the country faced a severe blood shortage. And whereas Pullman local families have relied on volunteers with Greater Inland Northwest Chapter of the Red Cross who responded to the unprecedented wildfires that devastated parts of Whitman County. Now, therefore, Glenn Jackson, the mayor of the city of Pullman, do hereby proclaim March 2021 as Red Cross Month. And I know Mike Heston is our fire chief. We've been out on a number of different fire scenes when families lose their home, and we see the Red Cross respond. We see the Red Cross. I've been out there with them as their public information officer, and Red Cross just does a fantastic job. And Mike, you probably just might want to give a couple of shout outs to the Red Cross too, because they come when you give the call.
Absolutely, Mayor. Thank you. We do use them when we go on structure fires, when we have families that are displaced and need some help. And we also been using them in their smoke alarm program as well. So they do some home inspections along with us. So we jointly work with them to get some free smoke alarms to pass those out as well. So great asset to our community.
And I know Gary Jenkins was involved with that. And let me see, Mike Urban was as well when we set up an emergency shelter at the new City Hall in the rec building there. We didn't have to use it that much, but we were all ready for the Colfax fires there to see if the families got displaced. And again, the Red Cross was there to help all of us. So again, Red Cross Month, March. I mentioned earlier that Gary Jenkins, who's our police chief and also our emergency coordinator for the city of Pullman, has some updates on the COVID-19 issues here in town, where we're at, the latest CDC responses and what to do. So, Gary, the mic's yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. You may have all seen that CDC has issued updated guidelines for vaccinated and unvaccinated people. And just in summary, fully vaccinated people now can visit with other fully vaccinated people indoors without wearing masks or social distancing. They can also visit with unvaccinated people from a single household who are at low risk for severe COVID-19 disease indoors without wearing masks or social distancing. And also, they do not need to quarantine or test following a known exposure if they are asymptomatic. I would note, though, that we are still in Washington State Phase 2 of Roadmap to Recovery, which still limits indoor gatherings to a total of 5 people and a maximum of 2 households. Are that they're seeing a recent increase in positive cases, and this is partly due to a combination of small spreader events involving social events and family events, and also impact of COVID fatigue. We're currently in vaccine phase 1B, tier 1. The county reports that most who are eligible to receive that vaccine and want the vaccine have been vaccinated. The vaccine phase for the next phase has been tweaked. The next vaccine phase is 1B Tier 2, which now includes K through 12 educators and staff, childcare, and fire and law enforcement staff who were not included in the 1A high-risk first responders. There's been no updated workplace guidance from State Department of Health or LNI as a result of the new CDC guidance, and so we are continuing with our workplace protocols that are currently in place right now. We hear from Whitman County Department of Health from their meetings with the state that the metrics for the next phase, phase 3, will include at least a case count per 100,000 over a 14-day period, as well as a percent of eligible vaccinated in the county or in the region. So there will be more metrics, but those are two that they know will be part of it. They'll also have, when regions move to the next phase, they will stay in the phase for a minimum of 4 weeks before they can move on to the following phase. And the county health departments are asking the state to issue their metric reports on Mondays so that phase changes can occur on Fridays instead of the current reporting on Thursday or Friday and then moving on the following Monday. The current or future vaccine allocation will be in 3-week increments. Whitman County will likely be guaranteed a minimum of 1,000 doses per week. Whitman County will likely not see much of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Those will be allocated to counties trying to catch up on their percent vaccinated, as well as addressing homeless populations. And also because Whitman County has a high capacity to store the cold temperature requirements of the Pfizer vaccine. The other thing that Mayor Johnson wanted me to mention was a roundtable. It was a rural mental health roundtable, was held on Saturday, hosted by WSU. People attending that roundtable were WSU Cougar Health Services, Counseling Services, and Student Affairs, Whitman County Department of Public Health, Palouse River Counseling, the county coroner, local healthcare providers and physicians. And the idea is to leverage the connections and collaboration that's been built to address COVID-19 and use that to address the surge that we've seen in mental health issues and that we anticipate to see in the future. Just to point that out, I looked at our numbers, and between 2018 and 2020, we've seen an increase of 450% of calls that have a mental health crisis element to them. Annie Pillars, our county coroner, and Mike Burney from Palouse River Counseling are leading a Whitman County Suicide Prevention and Resiliency Task Force. They are working with community partners to roll out what's called Practice the Pause, and it's a program that provides skills to improve resiliency in communities. So they're going to be doing a lot more work on that, and you'll be hearing more about what's going on with addressing mental health in our community more in the future. Back to you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Nathan, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Chief, 2 questions. One, regarding the homeless population here locally, what kind of outreach are we doing to get those people vaccinated? And I'll wait on the second question until that's answered.
So I haven't heard specifically about that, and I don't know what county health has done or what their plans are for that. So I don't think I can answer that question.
Okay. I think the council knows, as well as many of the staff, yourself as well, Chief. Homeless and poverty are rising in Pullman. This has been a huge issue that I've been trying to address for the last decade. And so I would like us to continue to get reports on how we're addressing that in a proactive way. So just mentioning that. The other question is regarding mental health. Now, Chief, you're obviously on the task force. Are there any other, Mr. Mayor, are you on the task force as well for the mental health?
No.
Okay, it's my opinion that the council needs to have a seat at the table regarding mental health. This has been again, another rising issue. We've dealt or started addressing it with our mental health first aid training. And I know, Chief, you've been at the forefront of really helping us to get that here as far as training. I know that's been a part of my goals for many, many years. And we started before the pandemic, and it was very popular for people to understand mental illness, mental health. So I'm mentioning that as well, Council and Mayor.
So just to comment on that, Councilmember Weller, it's really at very early stages with what's going on with the task force. And they're definitely not wanting to exclude anybody. I think they're just trying to get a core amount of people together to get the ball rolling. And we definitely are looking for as many community partners as we can to be involved and make this as successful as possible.
And Gary, it sounds like you're having some internet issues there as far as the audio is concerned. The other thing, Nathan, you could certainly contact Chris Skidmore, the Whitman County Public Health Director, and ask about the homeless reach out, since that's on your mind. I know they have that in a number of different communities where they're much larger homeless populations, but at least they could give you an update as to what they're doing. So if you call Chris at Whitman County Public Health, I'm sure he can get you an answer. Al Sorensen.
Hey, Gary, just a quick question in regards to vaccine distribution. I know that they've opened it up to K through 12 instructors. What about university, college communities, community?
All the details about the next phase. So we should have about a week or two notice before we move it in the next phase. So I should have some of those details soon.
Okay, Ann Parks.
Thank you, Mayor. I just asked my husband, who's in the provost office at WSU, and he said that they just recently asked the governor, and they were told not yet for at least for WSU faculty and staff. So we can get more information on that. If he has any more information, I can share it in the future as well.
And I could speak for the community colleges of Spokane because that's been our agenda too. And we've had a number of different meetings with people in Olympia, and we have not heard anything for the community college teachers as well. There's no other, yes, Al?
Well, I'll just finish on that. So, I would like to see a little more consistency at the state level with this. We're saying that our younger K through 12 teachers are deserving of having the vaccine, but not our higher education instructors or people that work there. And I hope that we're pushing for that to move forward. So it's just, in my own personal opinion, embarrassing to me that we're not including them as, quote, necessity and instructors that need to be vaccinated. So.
And I will say that I do know that our legislative representatives at WSU are very applying a lot of pressure and very active on that front weekly. So they're doing the best they can. And I'm sure at the federal level too, our representatives there are working on it as well.
All right, we now move to item number C on our agenda tonight, and that's a presentation from the City Council Art Mural Subcommittee. And again, all of us want to thank Eileen McCall and Pat Wright and Dan Records for serving on this, for volunteering and doing a lot of work. I think Eileen told me they've had over 11 hours of meetings already so far in this meeting. And we're going to turn it over to Dan Records, who I understand was elected chair of this group. So Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. As you may recall, at our February 23rd council meeting, the council voted to basically do a reset on the mural project. And along with that, we decided to have a subcommittee engage in some of that work to bring back recommendations to council at this meeting. So in lots of discussions, we held 2 meetings last week, one on Tuesday, one on Friday. And we came up with a number of recommendations for this project. We tried to split it up into kind of manageable chunks. So there are 7 specific recommendations that we're going to be making. But I wanted to kind of talk about, just give an introduction, a little bit of an overview of what the subcommittee talked about in terms of the intention of this project before we get into the specific recommendations. And so the subcommittee felt fairly strongly that this project is not just about a piece of art. It's about a statement of the city's commitment to engage in work on having a seat at the table in this community-wide conversation that's been occurring about what does racism look like in our community, what does it mean to us, and how do we address it? And it's clear based on the social media contents of the discussions about the previous iteration of this mural that our community is not all on the same page. There are disagreements in our community about what this issue means to our community, and the subcommittee incorporated that into our ideas for what this project should be. And one of the overarching things that was a reoccurring theme in our discussions was that we as a city need to make sure that everyone in our community has the opportunity to feel welcomed here. And that should be the message that we go forward with the intention of this mural project. So with that, the specific recommendations that the subcommittee made, and I'm just going to pull up my notes on this so I get it accurate here. The first motion we made is to recommend the City Council select the Spring Street retaining wall as the site for the mural project. That was at the last meeting, that was kind of left on the table for the City Council. So we felt that we needed to kind of give a direction or a recommendation on the specific siting location. The second motion was to recommend, instead of one large mural across the entire wall, that we use a series of panels for the mural project. And with one panel being installed this first year, and then making this an annual event where we add a panel every year going off into the future. The idea surrounding this is really that to show the intention that this is not just a one and done project, that there is a commitment by the city to engage and have a seat at the table in this conversation going off to the future. So the first panel, the idea would be to represent twofold. One, where we are now in the conversation in the community. And then the second aspect of that to be what are our aspirational goals of where we want to be as a community on this issue. And so the specific motion, I'll just read it here, is to use a series of panels for this mural project to be updated and expanded annually. Each panel that will serve as the art canvas shall be between the expansion joints, roughly between the expansion joints in size. So that concrete wall is approximately 7 feet tall, and there are expansion joints along the wall. And so the subcommittee recommended that we limit the size of the panels to approximately 2 expansion joints width. The third recommendation is relating to, the third and fourth recommendation is relating to the selection of the artist. And we did have a lot of discussion about the selection process is really, we want this art piece to be a statement by the city representing the community and where the community is at. And so instead of going through the public arts policy selection through an open competition, what we talked about doing is having a request for qualifications for artists go out, similar to our procurement processes for professional services agreements, where we develop an RFQ to go out and then have artists send in their qualifications if they're interested in performing the project. And we would request the Pullman Arts Commission to advise the council in its selection of a qualified artist to present proposals for the mural project. The fourth motion was to recommend that the Art Mural Subcommittee hold a town hall meeting on March 16th. So that would be the next Tuesday, where there's not a council meeting scheduled. Hold a public town hall meeting to gather feedback from the community regarding the specific content elements of to be considered for including in a survey that would go out to the community. So we really discussed a lot of the need to gather specific feedback from the community on this, starting with a broader scope at a public town hall meeting. And then leading into the next motion, which we recommended working with staff to develop a survey that can go out to the community. And we'd use the feedback from that town hall meeting to craft that survey and have that be a web-based survey with an alternative option of either providing a voice call-in line where people can leave messages or submit emails or letters to City Hall with their feedback on that. And from that, leading into the next motion, where we would gather the feedback from both the town hall and that survey process to develop the RFQ, to describe the project to artists so that they know and understand kind of the scope and the specific things that the city wants included in this art project. And that would be something that we would ask the Arts Commission to provide feedback on in working with the staff person developing the RFQ to recommend what qualifications go in that RFQ and what specific content elements that the city wants to see represented in the artwork itself. The specific wording on that last motion is the subcommittee recommends incorporating feedback from the survey into the RFQ and the deliberative process. And then the final motion that we made was we recommend establishing June 19th as a target date in connection with this project. And June 19th is specifically Juneteenth is traditionally celebrated as the end of slavery. So it's in Texas, approximately 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation was given by President Lincoln, there was still slavery that was allowed to occur in Texas. And it wasn't until the Union Army moved into Texas and was able to finally end that process in Texas. And so this is a celebration of the end of slavery that is traditionally celebrated throughout the country in various aspects, and has gained more recognition in recent years. We specifically left kind of the wording as a target date for that because we understand that we're looking at a shortened time frame here between now doing this public feedback efforts and developing an RFQ, giving time for artists to submit qualifications and then develop a proposal once we select an artist and then get it to completion. So we understand that the target date of June 19th may not be possible because there's things we don't know, things that can occur between now and then to get a finished installed project up on the wall by then. But we thought that if there's some iteration of something that we can get accomplished by June 19th, having that be a part of an event where we could plan associated events with that activity, potentially involving the Chamber, the Downtown Business or Downtown Pullman Association, downtown businesses, doing some sort of event. And given that we're still in a pandemic, we don't know exactly what that might look like right now. But the idea is that this could be part of an annual event that we do in connection with the unveiling of the progressive panels as a continuing evolution of how this story unfolds and how this community conversation goes over time. And I'm particularly excited about this idea and this kind of The idea that we could have an event, do a street fair where we block off that section of Spring Street, bring in a barbecue truck, bring in live music, have vendors present, involve the downtown businesses, make this a really a downtown Pullman kind of celebration for the whole community. I think that could be really cool. But those were our specific recommendations in terms of the art project. We didn't get into a lot of specific details about the content because I feel like what happened previously with the previous iteration of this, there was a lot of back and forth online, but not a lot of specifics on what the overall community wants to see in this. I saw a lot of very strong opinions expressed by some people, but I didn't see a whole lot of consensus among the community about what specifically we want this to be. And I think having this process the way that we've laid this out gives us an opportunity to have a very directed, official way for public feedback to come in and to channel it from broad down to specific, and get narrower as we get towards that goal of fairly specific what we want to be included in the artwork. So I also want to mention that I attended the Pullman Arts Commission meeting earlier tonight and briefed them on these recommendations. And they had a few questions. One of them that I wanted to mention was that we didn't address as a subcommittee is where the funding for this would come from. A couple of the other comments from the Arts Commission was about the qualifications and about, do we want to make this narrow qualifications or broad qualifications to allow for a broad variety of experiences and different levels of technical expertise to be potentially artists applying for this and to be a part of this project. And so I'd be happy to open the floor for discussion to answer any questions that other council members may have, or just start that conversation off.
Okay, I see Nathan's hand up first. Okay, Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Records, that was very impressive. Thank you to the subcommittee as well. It's a lot to unpack. I will begin by saying, something that I think I don't know how much we, so a lot of this, in my opinion, from what I remember when we originally were looking at the mural, came on the heels of the Black Lives Matter demonstration here in Pullman and also nationally. And it would be remiss of me to not mention that or the impact nationally, internationally as well, and historically for all of us. I do not believe this mural would have been discussed at all had that not occurred. That being said, I also know that Mayor Johnson and others worked very hard on the welcoming sign coming into Pullman. But I will say this, the Black Lives Matter did really instigate a lot of this mural discussion. I did have questions regarding, we're talking about a Juneteenth celebration. I think that's great, a great idea. I would ask that we also discuss with the different communities, cultural groups in our region about the celebrations that they feel would be important. Us, from a top down, don't know. I mean, we're all sitting around the table very similar, coming from similar ethnicities, obviously. And so I would want to make sure if we're doing a celebration and so on and so forth, that those voices come out heard, that they're heard, that we ask them, what would you like, as far as the celebration. The other thing I would say, we have many, many great artists. And in the interest of equity, I would I would consider us having, some preference towards, maybe preference is the wrong word, but look more towards the cultural diversity in our artists. So I'm placing that out there. That's a lot that I left on the table to unpack as well, but thank you so much.
Thank you for that, Nathan. I just want to mention that we did have a lot of discussion with the subcommittee about specific outreach to communities of color, people with lived experience of what we are talking about and representing in a piece of artwork like this. And along with advertising for the town hall meeting and the survey and things like that, specifically doing some legwork of reaching out to broadly reach a broad diversity of members of our community to make sure that this isn't just something that we're, putting up a press release in the paper and then having people come and whoever sees that come in. We want to make sure that we are doing some legwork to reach as broad an audience as we can to get feedback from our community. We did talk about, some of the feedback that was coming in on social media previously was coming from, other parts of the world, other parts of the country. And we did feel like we needed to have some level of statement about, we want the survey and the town hall meeting to be reflective of the feedback from members of our community. And we did have some discussions about what does members of our community mean, because there are people, not just residents or property owners in Pullman, but people that live nearby, that work in our community, that shop and are part of our community. They're regularly part of our community and our events. Having some survey questions that ask about that. And that's getting into some of the technical nuts and bolts of, a survey like that. But the subcommittee did talk about that and the need to make sure that the views that we're considering are those that are reflective of the members of our community and not strangers to Pullman, not people with opinions about things from other parts of the world or the country, but things that really matter to our community. Because this is really about Pullman and what does this mean to Pullman, not what does it mean to the rest of the world. And I think it's important for us to recognize that there are a diversity of viewpoints on this, and that is part of the conversation that needs to take place in our community is how do we talk about this in a way where we're not just saying, making a statement that, I know that I'm right and therefore you're an idiot if you have a different viewpoint, because that doesn't get us anywhere. We need to be able to talk about this in a way that is respectful of people, but also recognizing that there is work to be done. This isn't something where we can just slap a Band-Aid on it and then move forward. We need to move forward with intention and with the commitment to do some hard work over the long haul to further this conversation. And that's oftentimes going to be uncomfortable for a lot of people, but it's something that's worth doing because it will make our community stronger in the long run.
Ann, I see, and then Brandon, is that you? Did you have your hand up?
I was scratching my head.
Oh, I see. Okay, we'll go to Ann next. Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor. Dan, Pat, and Eileen, I really want to thank you. In a very short time, you have really come up with a quite detailed, specific plan that addresses so many of the concerns that have been raised, and I just very much appreciate what you've done. I like the idea of the panels, adding panels each year, because I think that it, like Dan said, it really reflects the concerns or the feelings or the emotions in our community each year. And I think that it'll be really neat to look at it all as as it develops and see where we go. I have a feeling that it will actually help to broaden the conversation and bring in more ideas, which is, of course, just exciting. And I agree that the focus of this first mural, should this all come to pass, should probably will be the topical nature that is important to right now in our world, in our nation. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I love the ideas, and you really thought it out quite well, and thank you very much.
I should also say, Ian, to your point about the panels in next year, the Arts Commission also, there was some discussion earlier today about keeping in mind and being thoughtful and intentional about what we put in the RFQ, what we design the project to be, and because if you have one panel that's one style and then the next panel is something completely different, that could be very contrasting. And keeping that in mind as we go forward, if we go forward with this idea, is do we want to talk about how next year's panel would either be completely open-ended and potentially contrasting with the previous panel, or should it be somehow talking about asking the artist to make it kind of a continuation of theme or style, so it's not so contrasting. But that's just some of the discussion they had previously tonight.
And I very much appreciate that. I actually think that whatever style happens subsequently would be great. I understand the thought of having sort of a theme and a look that's consistent, but on the other hand, it's art and it's going to be very topical. So this year's mural, the submissions that we saw were quite colorful and bold, and for a reason, because it was behind that theme. I personally wouldn't have a problem with something being contrasting the next year, because again, I think it would reflect the climate that we're in at that moment and what our community is feeling. But I do understand the point of view of, do we want to make it more consistent? That makes sense too.
Okay. Other comments? Go to Pat Wright.
So thank you, Anne and Nathan, for your comments. We certainly, with the panel idea, our initial intent was to try to make sure that we did have the ability to touch on timely and topical issues that would, present themselves in the future. And so the panel idea certainly lent itself to that. The other thing is that we also wanted to open it up to as many participants as we could, looking at a prototype that Eileen brought to our attention of a wall in Spokane, where it was Black Lives Matter, but each letter was done by a different artist. And so, that being able to capture in itself, a level of diversity that we could look at from that perspective. And lastly, we feel very strongly that we want to make sure that our intent, or the intent of this mural or mural panel, is known, so that when we have future legislative bodies, where I don't think all of us are going to be here forever and ever and a day, but that those following us understand what the intent of this was, so that we do have that built-in ability to make sure that this continues with some permanence. So we gave it a lot of thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan?
I'll also add to that, some of the discussion we had with the panel idea was that, if this is an annual event, at some point we may get to the wall being full of panels, and that gives the opportunity to then take down the first panel, put it in a collection or move it somewhere else, and then have a new panel go up, so that the the conversation is constantly evolving, and it's not just, you know, this one panel is forever affixed to the wall, but but that there is some evolution to the story, because this is a, you know, this is a snapshot in history that we're living in this present moment. But it's important to look back at our history as we talk about the future. But at the same time, this is a living thing about how we talk about this issue in our community, and it will evolve over time. And I like the idea of the art project evolving with that conversation as we go forward.
Okay. Others, Brandon.
Yeah. Now I'm not scratching my head. I'm actually question, Dan. Thank you, by the way, to the subcommittee for the time and work you did on this. It is appreciated. In terms of the technical specs, you mentioned an RFQ, so you know, I would imagine we need to be really detailed to make sure that the folks who do this, you know, we're telling them what level of quality this needs to be, archivist quality, or whatever it may be. I mean, you know, Councilmember Wright mentions the mural up in Spokane. I know one of the people who participated in that mural was somebody who had submitted, you know, in the last go round here in Pullman. So we do have people that I think are rather good and might very much know what they're doing. But from a technical standpoint, I mean, is that going to be crystal clear? You know, so when somebody says, yes, I can meet these qualifications, we know that's legit.
That's part of the reason why we wanted to recommend the Arts Commission weigh in on providing feedback to the staff person that would be drafting that RFQ about those kind of specific details. I think there are some details that about the project that would need to come after we select an artist, such as, you know, we talked about a panel, but what specific material may the artist, I would imagine, may have an opinion on what materials they work with, and also getting feedback from Public Works about the engineering of anchoring a panel to the wall. So I think some of those things have to be a little bit flexible, but we do think that the RFQ process allows us to be fairly specific about what this project entails and what level of qualifications we think are necessary. And that's where I would say the Arts Commission, that's part of their role, is providing feedback to us on what level of qualifications they would recommend, and then we can look at the final approval of the RFQ before it goes out. But those are all things where we can be fairly specific with what the qualifications are in an RFQ process.
All right, very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Other comments? If not, Dan, you came with a number of different motions, and it comes from a committee, so they come in basically as a seconded motion. So do you want to walk us through each one? And we can, now I just see Al's hand just came up. So Al?
I didn't know we were going to go to a motion all of a sudden. So I have a number of questions, comments about the discussion going on. And first thing I note down here, and Nathan just disappeared. I don't know where he went. First off, Nathan, you don't speak for me, so don't say all of us, please. And then I want to go back to this. We talk about, Dan, you talk about the community and what the community wants in regards to any type of a project like this. And I completely agree that we need to make sure that it is the local community that is brought into this. Over the last couple of weeks, even more than I did in the last few months, I have had multiple people speak to me about where we're going with this project. What will it say on the panels? What kind of things is it going to bring up? And is it really representative of our community? I'll go back to where I've been at for my entire time, either on city council when I was on here 12 years ago or for the last 7 years. In my opinion, it's about what our local community wants, and the majority of our local community wants. It's not about a specific little group of people that want a specific thing put on a wall or somewhere. And don't get me wrong, I am against racism 100%. Now, I'd love for the newspaper to print that one for me, but they won't. So here's the deal. I just want to make sure that it is what our local community wants to happen, because if it's only about a few people that want something to happen, that's different. What we put on it, and I read through the minutes of your meeting and everything else, and your motions and everything, and we haven't even discussed some of this tonight about what do we want the panel to have on it. Is it going to have words? Is it not going to have words? Is it going to have pictures? Is it not going to have pictures? What is it going to be? We're not anywhere close to deciding, in my opinion, on what that's happening. I have had so many people communicate with me, particularly this week since Thursday when our agenda came out, that they are very concerned about how this does represent our community. So I just want to make sure that whatever we're doing with this, that it is, again, representative of the entire community or the majority of the community, which is how I do things. I'm representing my constituents, I'm representing the community, and I want to make sure that we do this in the right way. But there's a lot more discussion here other than moving to a motion on things. I want to make sure that we know exactly what we're doing. Have we decided whether or not we're going to contact the people that live within so many feet or so many yards of this project? I understand that it is not a requirement to communicate with them because of the type of project this is, but it's not about what is required, it's what about what is right and what we should do with our community. We should be contacting everyone within those areas. I'll be honest, do I want a mural painted outside my wall on something? I don't care what the mural would say. Maybe, maybe not. But I would like to be contacted about it and talked to about it and at least give my opinion on it. So I just want everyone to understand where I'm coming from at this. And it's not just about Black lives here. This is about representing all communities, no matter who you are, okay? And I believe that if we are going to be a community that is, quote, welcoming, like the mayor did with his welcoming area, we need to be welcoming on this entire project of all, okay? So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Dan, go ahead.
Okay. Al, I think, the subcommittee, we did talk about your suggestion for notifying people within 300 feet. And I think we were all in agreement that that's a good idea. We didn't make a specific motion, but I think we were all in agreement that that was a good idea. And I would support that as well. A lot of what we talked about with the specific content and what's it going to say or what's it not going to say, those types of things, we really felt pretty strongly that we have not, on this project, we really need, this is why we spent most of our time talking about the outreach, to do the public town hall, to do a survey, to get broad feedback, narrow it down, get to that specifics, and make sure that we have an idea that this is something that everybody in the community has had an opportunity to weigh in on, that they've had their voice be heard, and that we can actually see this is what the community broadly wants. So it's not just left to whoever is on Facebook during the time that it was up before. We got a lot of very strong opinions previously, but we did not get a whole lot of opinions that are what I felt like, and I think what the subcommittee felt like, was a clear indication of consensus among the community about what this should be. And so that's really why we wanted to go back and do a town hall meeting and then follow that up with a survey that goes out broadly, and that we do some of that legwork to make sure that it is getting advertised in all sorts of places, so that we can actually have some metrics on, people in our community are talking about, this is what their ideas are, this is what they want to see on this mural, so that it's not just us dictating to the community, this is the message we want. This is the community's conversation that's happening, and that's what this mural project is about, is what does the community say about this issue, and where are we at now, and where do we want to be in the future. So I agree that public feedback, and it needs to be representative of the broader community of the Pullman community, and members of our community. So yeah.
So Dan, you mentioned earlier you met with the Arts Commission, and one of their concerns was financing. So where are you at with that, and where are we coming up with the money on this? But the Arts Commission, did they give you an estimate of what they thought this might cost?
No, we didn't have a lot of specifics about that. It was more me. I wanted to make sure that we talked about it with the Arts Commission going into this council meeting. If we were going to decide something that put responsibility back on the Arts Commission, I just wanted to make sure they had an opportunity to hear about it first. But you got to remember also that the Arts Commission has had 4 resignations recently, and there's only 3 members remaining, and they have other items on their agenda, including the site public art siting plan, the art walk, which they made a motion during their meeting to kind of put that on pause right now, because there's not enough members of the Arts Commission to actually, get that accomplished by the beginning of April. And also they talked about, and they made a motion to make sure that they rethink that project if they are able to go forward when they get more members, because they listened to the council discussion on the art walk project, and they had a lot of similar concerns to what council raised, and so they want to make sure that project goes forward with some of that feedback in mind, and not just try to slap something together last minute. So that's on pause right now, but with the intention that they may be able to open that up if they get more members. And so I just wanted to put that context together for what we're talking about here.
So, when we originally talked about this project, it was supposed to be 0 cost to the city and 0 maintenance to the city. And I believe that's completely changed now. Is that correct?
We did not discuss the finances in detail with the subcommittee, other than an intention that we feel strongly that the city should move forward with this project, even if it has to come out of some public funds to put this project up. The donated funds that the Arts Commission has available, I don't know, maybe Mike can talk about this, but the Arts Commission previously talked about a $1,500 stipend for the artist. And so I think there are some donated funds available through the Arts Commission, but those are funds that they have fundraised for a variety of projects, including the utility wrap projects that are coming up as well. And so we need to be, if we're gonna talk about what is the cost of this project, I don't know if we can tell you at this moment what the cost of this project would be, because some of that's going to depend on the artists that we select and them developing a proposal, which would come along with a budget for that proposal. And we would have to check in with Public Works to see about the engineering estimates for anchoring such a panel to the wall and what that cost estimate would be. So there are some unknown pieces right now. But I don't know if we can fully answer all of those questions now before we get along in some of this process. Because what we're talking about to start with is this public feedback process, which will inform that RFQ. And then once we get to the RFQ stage, there may be more information at that point to get some a better cost estimate. But that's something that I think we need to discuss, is at what point do we need to determine a budget for this and where that would come from. But right now, I can't tell you an estimate on what this project would cost.
And so we're going to be having a budget presentation here shortly, and we're going to have to look at that. And this is something that is completely flip-flop for me in regards to how this is going to get paid for. And with everything else that's going on, I am concerned about that. Now, I don't believe this is going to be a quote major expense to the city, but it definitely is something that we talked about months ago when this first came up, and so I'm still very concerned about that situation.
The subcommittee did talk about going with a single panel first for this first year, scales down the project, and potentially gives us some cost savings this first year on a project like this. But also we talked about the original project. It was talked about with no cost to the city, but the maintenance of that was going to have a financial impact on the city. Maintaining a mural like that over time was going to have some impact on staff time, on materials to repair it over time if there's damage to it. And so that was part of our discussion about how to mitigate those costs. And one of the panel may cost a little bit more to put up in the beginning because you have anchors that need to go into the wall, and the material to buy the panel. But that also gives us more flexibility with the project. If it does need to be repaired, it can be taken down, taken to a location and repaired without having to shut down the entire street and maintain those repairs. So we did have some discussion of the costs of this, and I think having a smaller panel than a 120-foot wide mural does give us some flexibility in the costs on this, especially as this first year when we're looking at some of these budget considerations being so tight right now.
Brendan, I saw.
Let me just throw one last thing in here, and that's in regards to the timeline for public comment to be 1 week from today. That's a pretty short timeline to try to get the word out. And so I would think that we might want to reconsider that type of a date before we go into voting on any motion about that. And I just throw that out there for everybody. We want to make sure that everyone in the community understands what's happening.
Okay, Brandon.
Yeah, no, thank you, Mayor. And in terms of finance, I would guess that if we have a first panel and it's something that is enjoyed by a lot of people, maybe that'll create the buzz we need for private donations and other things. So certainly I think that's important. I know we're never going to actually be able to allow everybody to comment. Like, we're just not going to hit everybody. We try to get as many people as we can, but there's one notion though that I think is really important to still realize, and Councilmember Weller touched on that. This was a group who specifically was requesting one thing, and is there any way to satisfy the whole community on this? No, there's not. And the thought that it would be a negative that a small group would want something, I think it's off base, because the whole point of this is that a small group is saying, hey, we've been marginalized, right? When there's a small group, that's where the injustice might happen, and does happen. And so the whole point of this really is to create some level of discomfort and say, let's look at the overall structure that we exist in. And of course, if that's because it's a small group that doesn't ever get to move forward on certain things and push against the majority, that's really what the conversation is about. And so I would push back on, definitely I agree with letting people, as many as we can get, comment, but I would push back on the idea that we can't have this be a smaller group or a group that's marginalized be able to speak.
Okay, Laura, did you have a comment about when I saw your video come on, I'm going, Laura must have a comment before we go to Nathan. Okay.
I just wanted to, there have been some comments about the procedure. So this was a committee that was charged with making recommendations, and they've come back with, I believe, 7 different recommendations. So the process would be to take each one of those as you'd need a motion and a second to proceed. They weren't charged with coming back with returning a motion. I went back and the minutes are in your packet, so I just wanted to confirm that for everyone.
Okay, so it doesn't come in as a seconded motion then?
It does not. You will need to take each.
Okay.
They've come back with recommendations, multiple recommendations. So perhaps to move through the discussions, it would be good to start with each one of those motions and go through them and have the discussion after each motion is made.
Okay. Nathan, we'll go to you next.
All right. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, of course, what Councilmember Sorensen said about funding, that is, of course, a concern, especially coming out of pandemic. But this is important, as Brandon mentioned. Even if it's a small group, most of the largest changes happen with small groups, small passionate groups. And we've seen that. The Welcome Center started small, I mean, many of the projects that we've taken on have come from small, passionate, active groups. So Brandon, I completely agree with what you said, and it was well said. And that's all that I have to say.
Okay, back to Dan.
Just on the point of being only a week before the the proposed town hall, we did talk about the timeline here, and if we want to accomplish something by June 19th, this is a fairly tight timeline that we've laid out. And I've talked with Mike, and I think it's doable, but it will take some strong intention to move forward with this. The other thing is that the subcommittee meetings were attended by many people. There were many people on the public call-in line. There's been significant media attention on this, and I think since we've gone forward with the subcommittee, there's been a significant amount of people paying attention to this. So I think that they've done some of that outreach work for us already with the media exposure that we have on this. But I also think if we go forward with setting that deadline or that timeline for a town hall meeting next week, I know I'm going to be reaching out to absolutely everybody that I can think of to let them know that this is happening and let them know about their opportunity to be heard at the town hall meeting. But we're also talking about the town hall meeting and follow it up with a survey that runs for 2 weeks that we also advertise very broadly. And so we're talking about not just the town hall meeting being an opportunity, but also the next 2 weeks after that being an opportunity for people to continue to provide feedback through that survey. And before we even get to the point where we're completing that draft of the RFQ.
Okay. Once again, Nathan.
Just real quick. So I just want to make sure with the town hall, the other council members, I mean, the subcommittee, it will just be for the subcommittee and outside comments. Correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, because if we have other council members there, it would create a quorum.
Correct. That's correct. It's going to be run by the subcommittee, as far as last I heard. So.
Yeah, and maybe that's a question for Laura about council members providing feedback through that town hall or ahead of that town hall to the subcommittee. If it's done in an open public meeting and we're not taking action.
Action is deliberation and discussion. So if you had a quorum of the council giving feedback at your town hall meeting, I think that would need to be noticed as a city council meeting, not a subcommittee meeting. But you could certainly have the city council hold the town hall meeting.
So I guess that would be part of the decision on the town hall meeting, would be whether it's a subcommittee meeting or a council meeting.
I was hoping for the subcommittee meeting. I think that just because you're intimately involved with every one of these things. Back to Nathan again.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I agree. I think it should be the subcommittee that holds the meeting. I feel that the council has had ample discussion regarding this, and it's now up. The subcommittee has spoken, and it's up for the town, the city to give their input. Yeah.
Nothing precludes you from being in the audience and listening. I mean, on YouTube or however they do it, but you're just not participating. So, as far as I know, and I always will defer to Laura on it. I'm seeing most of the council saying, let's move it, at least go for Dan, if you'll start with your motions, I mean, your recommendations, and we'll see if we get a motion and a second, then we can, from that standpoint, we'll have further discussion on each item. I think the first thing you had was Spring Street, but why don't you start with each one?
Sure.
We'll go for a motion, go for a second, we'll discuss, and then we'll have a vote, okay?
Sure. On the subcommittee's first recommendation is to select Spring Street retaining wall as the site for the mural project.
Okay,
So
So-
moved.
Second.
I had a move and a second. Any further discussion on that? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
And did you?
Yeah, I did. Just
Oh.
one point to that is I do agree that the everyone within 300 feet of the location would be contacted about this. Is that?
I think we can make a separate motion to do that.
Okay.
You could
So-
do that, or you could have an amendment to the motion. And then there's either way, there's still two votes.
Okay.
I have a quick question. So what we're doing here is moving forward with the project. Is that what we're doing?
We're going individually. We'll find out how far it goes on the 7 different recommendations. So Eileen?
I hope we made it clear that in these notes and in the minutes, which were very good, and there was a lot going on, and I applaud those who captured all that information. I hope we made it clear that at every point this comes back to council. So, which is where we went wrong in the first place with the initiation of a project. So at every point, Al, this comes back to council. So at any point, we could potentially make a major change.
Okay. Dan, back to you.
Dan?
I'll just add to that. You know, the first major point of this is to go forward with the public feedback section, and then use the feedback we get from that to develop the RFQ, which would need to be approved by council. And so there's a point there for more discussion by council. And then as we go forward to the selection of an artist would also be the council would need to make the final decision on the selection of an artist. So that's the second point. And then as we move forward working with the artist, before the final rendering is accepted, that would be a decision for council as well. So there's 3 points in this process as laid out here for council to weigh in on those decision points.
Okay. So I've had a motion and a second. All those in favor, this is the Spring Street location. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
1 nay. Now, do you want to do the 300 feet next, Dan?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we contact people within 300 feet of the location and inform them of the nature and scope of the project and the timeline.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion on that?
Yeah, I just want to, are we talking about residents or business owners? I just want to clarify.
I think
Oh,
I would recommend
There's people above, or there's people across the way. There's businesses across the way. There's apartments across the way. I'm thinking of all the different things that are out there.
I mean, if we need to amend the motion, I would say business owners, property owners, and residents.
Mike.
Mike
Mike.
Urban.
Hey, sorry, just a point of clarification on the notification. Is that specifically ahead of discussing the project, or is that specifically to make them aware of the town hall meeting?
I thought there was to let them know that Spring Street has been selected as a location.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be clear on that.
I just want to make sure. Yeah. Ann?
I have a question regarding the location and the timeline. And maybe, I don't know who would know this, but I know that Spring Street is slated to be resurfaced from that point all the way pretty much through to Bishop Boulevard. Is the proposed June installation, do we know where the construction on Spring Street will be at that moment? Yes, Eileen, thank you.
That's the beauty of the panels project, is that the panels can be, the artwork can be rendered onto the panels anywhere.
Okay.
And it'll be likely to be installed in a matter of an hour or so. It's a quick in, quick out.
Great, thank you. And then June 19th, actually, if this all happens, is a Saturday, so there probably wouldn't be work that day. But anyway, thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, going back, I've had a motion to second on the 300 feet notification. Any further discussion on that? Yes, Al?
Quick, just for clarification, can we just say the whole motion again? I see Laura shaking her head. So,
okay.
Sure. I'll restate it as best I can. I move that we notify all business owners, property owners, and residents within 300 feet of the Spring Street wall location of the nature, scope, and time frame of the project.
Second.
Okay.
So does that include their comments, that they're not just notification, but they need to be able to respond to this? Do you see what I'm saying? If you say it the way you did, Dan, we're doing this and it doesn't matter. We need to be able to let them make their comments be heard. Laura, is that okay with that? You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I would agree that that's how the motion was stated.
Would that be notification of the town hall meeting or the 2-week survey after the town hall meeting?
It probably should be about the town hall meeting, that this is the location that has been decided on, but not finalized. You see where I'm going with this. So we need to let the people living within the 300 feet make their comments before we decide that it's done.
Any further comments? Going back to Mike Urban.
Yeah, and that's why I was looking for the clarification, because if that is the direction of the council, to notify within 300 feet to let them know of the timeline and all these things so they can make comment at the town hall meeting. I don't know if we can do that in a week.
Mm-hmm.
Would instead of the town hall, would it be better on the survey, which is going to that gives you an additional 2 weeks? If they be included in this, make sure they're notified of the survey and they be included for that. So they would all have to comment then too.
I'll just say it's important for me that these people, property owners and residents, be informed that this is a possible project happening and they need to be able to make their comments heard. And I would hope that the rest of the council would think the same way.
In Parks.
May I ask, maybe for Mike, how does the notification actually occur? Is it phone calls, door-to-door, emails? What sort of information about anyone in the city? How would that work?
It depends how council would like me to deploy staff on this in the short period of time. I know that we have all our other normal responsibilities as well. So it makes the most sense to do it by mail. I don't think our email list is complete enough for this type of a deal. And there's property owners, there's renters. I would want to sit down with staff and come up with the best way to do that. And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be as all encompassing as it can. The tighter the timeline, the more things that could fall through the crack.
Laura and then Dan.
So I just was going to add that often notice on matters, land use matters in an area radius surrounding a property, that's given in both by posting signage near at the proposed site, and then also mailed notice of the hearings on those matters. But yeah, that I would agree, that would take, to give reasonable notice that someone would be reasonably expected to see and be aware of, you would need more than a week.
So does the meeting have to be on Tuesday, the 16th, the town hall? Could we push?
That is what we discussed, because that was an open time slot on the city council. The city council meeting is not scheduled for that week.
Right.
That could be moved, but also we were very mindful to keep in mind the tight timeline that we're working with. And also I want to reiterate that, the town hall meeting is one of the opportunities, the survey is another opportunity, but also we have, before we even get to developing the RFQ, that is the first decision point. That would be the RFQ going out to artists. Would be another council decision at that point. And so if we were able to effectuate a notice to all the people within 300 feet by mail and list if we can't get it out before the town hall meeting, but list the town hall meeting, list the survey as an option, list the follow-up council meeting that we're going to have the discussion on the RFQ, and list a mailing address for the city hall for them to provide comments, the email address for contacting council, and if we can, I don't know if this is possible, Mike, to set up a voicemail line for people to provide feedback on this specific matter. I don't know if that's something the RingCentral platform can do, where we can dedicate a phone number to call to provide voice feedback for this. But we did talk about, as a subcommittee, lots of different options for people to provide feedback. So it's not just you only have one opportunity. We have several modes to get feedback. And really we're talking about feedback informing this process to develop the RFQ. And that would be a decision point. And I would say if we came to that point, and there was significant feedback about the location, the council could always make a decision about the location at that point, modifying a decision that we might make tonight.
Okay, Pat, and then we'll go to Al.
Just realistically, how many individual entities are we talking about here that would have to be notified in that 300-foot radius?
Say
10, 12, maybe?
I think we're about 10 buildings, 10 to 15 buildings. And some of them, like Sanctuary, have lots of residents. And there's several of the houses up on the hill that are broken into apartments with several residents each. And there's a lot of apartments around there. So it's potentially a much larger number of individuals, individual addresses. And I don't know if anybody has an exact figure on that.
Okay, Al?
My comment goes back to some other things I've said before, and that is I want to move forward with this as quickly as we can. But we also need to understand this is a major decision being made in our community, and we need to process it through properly. And if it takes one extra week to do it, I'm totally in favor of that. And I want to make sure that we do this as thoroughly as we can. And you know what? If it delays the project from being done by the middle of June, I'm sorry. But we need to make sure that this project is done the way that it needs to be done for the entire community.
Going back now to the 300 feet motion, and as I recall, we had a second on that. Just want to double check. And we had Dan, if you want to restate it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Also, we're going to have, motions coming up here that are going to be dealing with the specific date of the town hall meeting and the June 19th target date. So we can have those discussions at that point. But in terms of the notification, the motion is that we notify business owners, property owners, and residents within 300 feet of the Spring Street wall location of the project scope and timeline, and notify them of the options for feedback that are available to them.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would say the possible project, it hasn't been decided on completely yet.
I think that's fine.
Okay. With that, we've already had the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Your next recommendation, Dan.
The subcommittee recommends to have staff send out an RFQ to artists, mural artists, and request that the Pullman Arts Commission advise the council on the selection of a qualified artist to present proposals for the mural project. I'm sorry. I got ahead of that.
Yeah, you kind of blended them together. Yeah.
So the second recommendation, we added another motion in the middle there. So the second recommendation from the subcommittee is to use a series of panels for this mural project to be updated and expanded annually. Each panel that will serve as the art canvas shall be roughly the size between the expansion joints of the concrete wall in size.
So I just want to make sure it's very clear. That was one complete motion.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And you made the motion, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Then do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Second from Nathan. Now, any further discussion on this? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
One nay. Okay. Dan?
The next recommendation from the subcommittee is to have staff send out an RFQ to artists/mural artists and request the Pullman Arts Commission to advise council on the selection of a qualified artist to present proposals for the mural project.
Okay. Do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Okay, second. Now, discussion. Okay, Mike Urban, I got a question for you, and then I also have Ann, okay?
Okay, I just need to apologize. I want to make sure we reiterate at this point that this is one of the touch points for City Council, that staff won't be sending out the RFQ without City Council's approval to move forward on that.
Okay.
It would be important to include that in the motion because that is not the standard process for an RFQ. You only approve RFQs above a certain, you don't actually ever approve RFQs. You approve the contracts.
Thank you, Laura. That is important. Yeah, it's important.
Yeah, so
I will.
I was trying to get to.
Okay. And Ann?
I was just wanting to clarify that at this point, this recommendation is a recommendation for procedure. It is not a recommendation that it for it to actually happen now. It's just approving the future procedure. Is that correct?
I see Dan moving his head up and down. Okay.
Yes. There's another motion that talks about kind of the timeline after receiving feedback through the town hall and survey process, informing the RFQ.
Okay, thank you.
So if I may restate the motion,
Yes.
The recommendation is to have staff send out an RFQ to artists/mural artists after council approval and request the Pullman Arts Commission to advise council on the selection of a qualified artist to present proposals for the mural project.
And I want to make sure we did get a second on that first time around, or to make sure it's okay with the seconder, right, Ann?
I did.
Okay.
Quick question for Laura. How does that sound, Laura? Is that? Hello.
I believe that has it. It's the procedure that's being followed is to have staff prepare an RFQ and bring the RFQ back to council for approval. And then
Okay.
to have in evaluating the selection of the artists responding to the RFQ, you would have the Arts Commission provide advice to the council.
And this is after it's approved that we're doing it.
Yeah, yes, it's really a two-pronged thing. One, you're
Right.
approving sending out using an RFQ process and the RFQ would be approved by council to solicit proposals, and then the Arts Commission would assist in evaluating those proposals and make a recommendation to the council for an actual award of contract.
Okay, thank
Am
you.
I understand that? That was my understanding, Dan, is that?
Yes, that's what the subcommittee intended.
Mhm.
Okay.
Any further discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Dan, next recommendation.
The subcommittee recommends holding a town hall meeting on March 16th, 2021 to gather feedback regarding specific content elements to be considered for including in a survey that will go out to the community.
Okay. Would you, before we have a motion here on this, Al, I see your hand up.
I was just going to discuss for a minute if that's the appropriate time.
Well, let's get us, since that came in, let's do, I want a second here first before we have a discussion.
Second.
Okay. Second from Nathan. Okay, now discussion. Okay, Al?
Okay. We got to make sure we do procedure. So I am concerned about the short turnaround on this. I really, really am. I believe that our community deserves an amount of time to be able to digest this and be able to respond to things and understand that there is going to be a community hall. It's not just comment, Dan. I understand what you're saying. This is the community hall meeting. And I am very concerned that 7 days from now is too short of a time period.
Okay. Any other comments about that? I'll go back to Dan, then we'll go to Brandon.
I was just going to see if anybody has any suggestions of other dates that would be appropriate for a town hall. Maybe Mike or Dee, when is the next council meeting scheduled after that?
I can comment on that. The next
Around the
scheduled
23rd.
meeting is the 23rd. That also doesn't preclude you from using a different night than a council night, of course.
Yeah, it
We
doesn't have to
haven't-
be a council meeting, right? Or a Tuesday. It can be any night.
And going into April, I'm not ready to. I'm still gathering information on April dates, so I can tell you with some assuredness the next council meeting will be the 23rd.
The 30th is still a tentative council, correct? March 30th?
Unless there's some emergent item that comes up or there's enough of an agenda that presents itself.
Okay. That's also, yeah, okay. All right, back to Dan.
I would just recommend if the rest of council also feels like we should give a little bit more time for announcing the town hall, I might suggest the 24th as a date. Wednesday, the 24th. Does anybody have any thoughts on that?
I think that would be
Yeah,
appropriate.
and my comment was actually going to be to ask Mike, just out of deference to staff, if they're going to be the ones to notify, having them feel comfortable that this can get done. And I agree with Al on this point. I mean, I understand Juneteenth is what we were shooting for. It also was more plausible, I think, previously, and at this point, I think I'd rather this be done right than done fast. We do have some other options. I mean, we could, maybe this could be part of Lentil Festival. Maybe when a lot of our WSU students are back in town that have an interest in this, maybe that's an option. But I think I think if we push this town hall back a few weeks and enable a better response from people, because we can get the word out, that might be a better idea.
And the other thing is that, it could be Lendl this year and next year could be Juneteenth. Yeah, be a different story. Okay, I'm going to go to Nathan next.
Yeah, I have to disagree that Juneteenth, I mean, it's significant. And this is a significant mural. It is art. It is also a statement for the community. If we need to set it back a little bit for comment and the 24th is better, then that's fine. But I really would like to see that Juneteenth date be set.
I'm going to go back to Dan, and then we'll go to Ann.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan, and thank you, Mayor. The subcommittee did talk quite a bit about the June 19th as a target date, and very much recognizing that there are some unknown pieces along this process, and there could be delays along the process. So we intentionally wrote that as a target in our recommendation, with the idea that there needs to be some flexibility in our thinking about what can be accomplished by June 19th. I think it would be really excellent if we could do an event on June 19th, but I don't think that it has to be, the completion of the project and installation on the wall. I think there are several other ideas that we could incorporate on June 19th along with this project that are doable. And given if we think creatively about like flexibility around that time frame and what we want that event to be, with the clear intention that the following year we have more time, we've established a process for this, and we can go forward with the intention with more clarity on what that will be. So I also recognize that is a very important date, and the reason why we proposed that was because of the significance of this mural project and the significance on how this community deals with this issue, and recognizing the correlations with history and with everything that's going on everywhere, but with the specific focus of how that happens within our community.
Eileen.
Let's steer ourselves back to the motion, and see if we can get a date, because I believe that is the nature of the motion.
Right. It is, and the motion has the 16th on the date.
So I'm certainly willing to be flexible on this date. I think Al's brought up some good points. And plus the fact there's already been a person out there in social media that has put out some scrambled information about the dates. So should we set a clear date this evening, then we can get a clear message out to the community with any, I have faith that the newspapers will report it accurately, and that we can get it out on our traditional media outlets rather than let the scrambled information that is currently out there sort of remain out there. I think we can just nail this down. Let's pick a date, make sure that it is sparkling clear to get the best response from the community.
And then we'll go back to Dan.
Thank you. I agree that I think the 24th is a reasonable date. I do think it's important right now in this year to keep this in this time frame and not, for example, excuse me, put it out to Lendl Festival, only because it's really topical right now. A lot of people are engaged and are wanting to be engaged and participate. And I think the longer we draw this process out, we may lose some of that momentum. So I would be happy to propose March 24th.
I'm going to go back to Dan. We've got a motion on the 16th. We can just defeat that and go to the next one. But
I was
Dan,
just ask Mike if the 24th, what your thoughts are in terms of staff being able to get notice out to people.
I'm confident that staff can get notice out to people. If we're relying on the 300-foot item, we're relying on USPS for part of it. I make no comment on that at all. But I know my staff we can work on staffing that meeting that night as well, making sure it's recorded, because at the end of it, we're going to need to provide some minutes to create the survey going forward for the subcommittee. So there's the pieces can be put in place. 24th, I feel a lot more comfortable with. If those are my two choices, the 16th or the 24th, I would certainly lean to the 24th.
Okay, so we've had a motion and a second on the 16th. So let's do that one first. It can be defeated, and then we can go on and get the 24th in there. So all those in favor of, okay, Al?
Can it just be, somebody please read it again or mention it again so I know exactly what we're doing?
The motion was to hold a town hall meeting on March 16th for feedback on the specific content for the development of a community survey.
Okay. So, Al?
You just said the 16th. Now you need
You're
to
right.
amend your.
That's the motion that's on the floor right now. Is the 16th. We're going to defeat.
Okay.
You defeat that one, then you can take the 24th. Okay.
Okay.
So.
I just want to get it correct. That's all.
Okay. Again, this is the 16th. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed say no.
No.
Any abstentions? Okay, it's defeated. Now, would you do the 24th, Dan?
Sure. I motion that we hold a town hall meeting on March 24th to gather feedback regarding specific content elements to be considered for including in a survey that will go out to the community.
I hear I've got a second on that. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the 24th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we've got that one done. Okay, next go. Dan?
I motion that we use feedback from the town hall meeting to develop a survey that is web-based with an alternate option to have a call-in phone number for voice message feedback, if that's possible, with a 2-week time frame, specifically intended to gather feedback from members of our community.
Okay. First of all, do I have a second? Okay, we got the second. Okay, now discussion. I saw Al's hand. Okay.
So you were pretty decisive there, Dan. We're not going to get any other feedback other than the town hall meeting.
No,
that was the motion. You need to open your motion bigger than that.
Dan, can you state that again, please?
So the way that it's written as the recommendation from the subcommittee is to recommend using feedback from the town hall to develop a survey that is web-based with an alternate option to have a call-in phone number for voice message feedback, if possible, with a 2-week time frame specifically intended to gather feedback from members of our community.
See what I'm saying? It needs to include feedback from emails, letters, whatever it might be, not just the town hall meeting.
I see what you're saying. And I think if we modify that to say that we are gathering, or that the feedback after the town hall meeting, so whatever feedback we gather after we hold the town hall meeting is when we would develop the survey. Is that what we're getting at?
Yes, I just want to make sure that it's inclusive of everything, not just the town hall meeting.
Right.
Nathan.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you just say include and including the town hall meeting and amend it that way? So input including the town hall meeting.
That would cover it.
Community input.
Yeah. As long as Laura says that would cover it.
If there is a motion to amend the motion, or the maker does it and the second accepts.
I'll amend the motion.
Okay. Thank you.
I propose we amend the motion to read that we will use feedback, including from the town hall, to develop a survey that is web-based with an alternate option to have a call-in phone number for voice message feedback, if possible, with a 2-week time frame, specifically intended to gather feedback from members of our community.
I saw Ann's hand earlier who seconded the motion, and she agreed to that. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to make sure it's clear. Back to Al.
Okay. And you guys, I'm sorry. I got to be a stickler on this stuff because I want to make sure that this is all proper. how are we going to identify that they are community members from our area?
The subcommittee talked about that, and I think that's part way in working with staff to develop the survey. We talked about including a question in the survey that could, and I think that's a little bit of working with staff to develop that question, but specifically some of the surveys that have gone out in the past that include a question about that says how you're connected to our community. And one of the options would be, I live in Pullman. One would be, I don't live in Pullman, but I work in Pullman. One would be, I don't live in Pullman, but I shop or recreate in Pullman, and something along those lines. But I think that's more on the specific, survey questions to be developed. I don't know if that's really what we would want to direct in this sort of motion. But I think, that's a clear intention with what we wanted to say, that specifically from members of our community is where we're trying to target the survey and get feedback from.
And I completely accept that, and I understand where the committee's coming from. What I'm trying to do is make sure that that is where the input and the information is coming from. I know we probably can't ask for their address or anything like that, but I want to make sure that it is local community members that we're surveying with this. And you're in agreement. I know that, and I know Pat is. I think everybody is. That this is about local community, and so I just want to make sure that we have a way to well, we can't verify it, but at least ask those questions. Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Lord, it looks like you had a comment, or you didn't.
I was just looking over my notebook.
I see. Okay. Got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Next, Dan.
I'm getting the workout here tonight.
You are.
The next motion is I motion that we incorporate feedback from the survey and all other feedback sources gathered at the completion of that survey into the RFQ and deliberative process.
Everyone understand?
That's the motion we had from the subcommittee, and I think it could probably use tweaking. So why don't I attempt that before we?
Yeah.
Friendly amendment. Maybe I had written down gather feedback to help develop the RFQ. Does that make it more clear?
Could you just read it again?
The way that it's written is. The way that it's written from our subcommittee meeting is we recommend incorporating feedback from the survey into the RFQ and deliberative process. But I think that could probably use some work. So let me just attempt to capture what I think the intention is there. I move that we incorporate feedback from the survey and all other sources of feedback on this project as of the date of the end of the survey into developing the RFQ with input from the Arts Commission for the qualifications and the specific content elements to be included in the project.
Second.
Yeah, that was, and I'm very glad that Dee's got a recorder going. Okay. And Laura's writing quickly. So, and we've had a second. Any further discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Dan, you're on a roll.
And the last recommendation from the subcommittee is I move that we establish June 19th as the target date in connection with this project, understanding that there needs to be some flexibility about what is to be completed on the 19th.
And all you're saying here is basically it's a target.
Correct.
Doesn't mean that we have to make it, but we're going to try and make it. Okay. Do I hear a second to that?
Second.
Okay, I've got a second. Any discussion on that? Back to Al, and then go to Brandon, okay?
Do we have to have a target? I mean, I understand what you're trying to do. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, do we have to have a target? I
think we
just
do.
asking.
I think we do.
Okay.
For the subcommittee discussion on that, we thought that with an RFQ going out for artists to be informed about what the intended timeline is, I think we should have something as a target date for that purpose.
Okay, so you're talking, okay, the RFQs, okay, all right, thank you. I just want to make sure I've got everything straight. Thank you very much.
Okay, Brandon?
Well, but then it also shows our commitment
Yeah.
to the intention of the project. So as not to be open-ended, that really is important to be established, I think.
Let's say the commitment. The commitment.
The commitment, correct.
Okay, Brandon.
Yeah, no, thank you. And to Pat's point, I just wanted to clarify that I think unequivocally this should be on Juneteenth. I just wanted to make sure that if there was some consternation over the date of the town hall and being able to have this in that fast a time, then you know we have that. But I think we need to shoot for Juneteenth. And just my perception is sometimes when artists get really excited about things, they can mobilize pretty fast, and they may be able to do this, you know, by that timeline without a problem. So,
yeah. Any further discussion? Okay, we've got a motion and a second on Juneteenth is the target date. Try in it, and the way you phrased it, Dan, is a goal, trying to hit it. Okay.
Yes.
Can let's have Laura read it then.
You'll need to.
What I have written down is to establish Juneteenth, June 19th, as the target date for culmination of the project with flexibility for the schedule. That's the best I got, and I'm hoping Councilmember Records will give his detailed notes to D.
I will.
Okay. So now you've heard the motion, the second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Dan, did you say that was the last one?
That's the last recommendation from the subcommittee. For further items for discussion for the council and decisions we want to make tonight, I would open the floor.
Okay. We got pretty specific, we got pretty well detailed. Is there anything further you would like to have? Because we know that Mike Urban can hardly wait to talk to us about our finances. I don't want to delay it too much further. If you have any further discussion on this. Okay, I see none. So we have handled the presentation. I think, again, I heard it from the council members. Our deep gratitude, thank you for the subcommittee for the work you did. And it's still going on. So we, again, thank you for that. And all the time commitment you've made.
Good job, Dan.
Also,
I personally would like to thank Dan for really pulling all of this together. He's done an amazing yeoman's job on this, and we couldn't have had the presentation that you saw here tonight without his thoughtfulness and organization and attention to detail and the process. Absolutely a delight working with him. So thank you.
Absolutely.
I would also like to thank all of the council and the mayor. You know, this discussion that we're continuing to have as we go forward, like I said, sometimes it may be uncomfortable, but you know, some of the discussion that we have is also reflective of the discussion that's happening in the community. And I think it's important that we all recognize that we're able to talk about these things and move forward in a constructive way, to continue getting things accomplished for the city, and to continue making our community better for everyone, and to really commit ourselves to making sure that everyone in our community has an opportunity to feel welcome here.
well said. With that, we
You
know.
I'm gonna just add on to that. I believe when the mayor, you were able to get your welcoming sign into town, as I hear from a lot of people, this city is very welcoming, has been, will be.
And we put a number of different finance groups together to get that sign done. Okay, with that, we go to item number 2, the financial update. Here is multi-purpose Mike Urban, Finance, City Administrator. And we have interviews tomorrow for candidates for finance directors. So Mike can almost see a little relief coming, but with that, it's Mike Urban.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. As I listen to the discussion tonight and I look at what I'm fully prepared to deliver your financial update. I've never done this in 30 minutes. In fact, I usually average 45 minutes. With a full agenda ahead of you tonight in an executive session. Before I begin, if Council wants to table this, I was looking at the next agenda on the 23rd, and there is capacity to table this.
That would be my vote.
Could we have a motion?
Okay, let's entertain a motion if you have one.
Pat, make the motion.
Move to table the quarterly financial update report to our next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Second.
You got a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I will come prepared.
And your PowerPoint will just be nicely aged. Ready to go. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. We now move to the consent agenda. These items are considered routine in nature. Do I have a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? We've kept Laura busy already. We'll give Laura some more duty here in reading the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mayor. Your consent agenda consists of a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes of the regular meeting of February 23, 2021, and approve them as submitted. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 102446 through 102486, totaling $143,668.61. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable check numbered 102487 through 102537, totaling $170,080.81. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 102538 through 102547, electronic transfers 34689, totaling $298,569.90, and payroll direct deposits numbered 66998 through 67305, totaling $867,592.06. A motion to approve disbursements for accounts payable checks numbered 102548 and 102549, totaling $588,498.20. A motion to approve the purchase of a 2021 Caterpillar 305E2 Trax excavator, Sourcewell contract number 03119-CAT, and a motion to accept the bid results of bid number 2021-002 Water and Sewer General Materials. And you have one resolution number R-12-21, a resolution setting a date for a public hearing to consider the 6-year transit development plan for 2021 to 2026 and 2020 transit annual report to the city of Pullman.
Is there any item the council would like out for discussion? Seeing none, the consent agenda consists of items 1 through 8. Do I hear a motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Move and second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? With that, we now get to the regular agenda. Tonight, item number 1 is a resolution rejecting all bids for contract 1912 Lawson Garden House project. We go to our Public Works Director, Kevin Gardis.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, City Council. In February of 2018, Pullman voters approved Prop 1, which included funding for a new garden house at Lawson Gardens. Bids for the project were open on February 2nd, 2021, with 8 bids received. The low base bid amount of $2,030,825.87 was submitted by Mangum Construction, LLC. The architect's estimate for the base bid portion of the project is $1,560,826.68. There are also 4 additive bid items. The city's architect investigated potential reasons for the high bids as compared to the estimate. And there's a bid summary memo that's included in your packet summarizing some of the issues that they put forward. There's also a copy of the bid summary included in your packet. Some of the potential issues that could have contributed to the higher bids were supply chain issues. This is a fairly high level of quality type structure for a fairly small footprint. So price per square foot is pretty high. So we're not getting much in the way of economy of scale. And just COVID in general, just the, living with COVID and all the stuff we have to do for that. The total budget for completion of the project is $1.4 million, with half from bond proceeds and half from a lodging tax grant. To date, a professional service agreement with Design West is in place for around $108,000, which leaves roughly $1,291,000 for construction. After reviewing the bids with the city's architect, we do not feel that the project can be brought back into budget solely by rescoping the project, as it would lead to undesirable levels of cuts to the original vision. Therefore, additional revenue will likely be needed. We feel the project can be rescoped to a certain extent, and savings can be realized perhaps in the $100,000 to $200,000 range without sacrificing too much of the quality. Additional revenue could take the form of savings from land acquisition costs for Fire Station 3, which is also included in that proposition, and or general fund CIP or Metro Parks. Staff is recommending that council reject all bids for Lawson Garden House project and direct staff to rescope the project with Design West and evaluate additional revenue sources with an eye towards being ready to go back out to bid later this year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions of Kevin? I don't see any hands up here, right? Oh, there's Eileen. Okay,
Yeah.
Eileen.
Just real quick, this may be outside the scope of the motion, and I don't want to drift out there. But at some point, are we released from that Prop 1 commitment? I know there was some talk about this some while ago, but I'm not recalling what.
I'd probably defer to Laura, city attorney, on this one.
Right, Laura.
So you do have the flexibility in the bond ordinance to change the use of funds to reflect changed conditions, budget conditions, things like that. It would require city council action to reallocate funds to another project. So yes, you do have that flexibility. We did build that into the bond ordinance.
Eileen, you have some additional comments?
Yeah, well, I guess maybe I was just going to move forward and move that we pass this resolution with sort of excluding the part where we expect to be ready to rebid the project later this year. I'm thinking we just trim it down and say we're rejecting it now, and we will deal with the rest of it at some other time. I'm really not in favor of trying to rebid this project this year.
Okay, Laura, go back to you, and then I'll go to Brandon.
Councilmember McCall, I was just going to point out that the resolution itself, all the resolution does is reject the bids.
Okay, the rest are just advisory.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Yeah.
Brandon, next to you.
Yeah, no, just one of the things that I was thinking about is I think it would be wise to reject the bid. I know one of the things that we've talked about before was we couldn't do the garden center earlier. I mean, we had to do City Hall first, and then we were going to do the garden center. And like each time we keep waiting, this thing is going to, I think it's going to increase in cost. I mean, we've seen construction costs go up, and so yeah, I do say we should reject this bid. But the longer we wait, just the more cost it's going to end up being. So. And I see Kevin nodding. Yeah, that's true. Construction costs don't go down, so just keep that in mind, I guess.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Yeah, Laura, go back to Laura. And then
Well,
go to
Mayor,
Pat.
I do think you had a motion from Councilmember McCall to approve the ordinance. Or the resolution. I don't know that we had a second.
Okay. I was going to get to, okay. I heard a second. I heard that one was that from Dan?
Dan
Yes.
Record.
Okay. Then Pat Wright.
So do we have some flexibility then in this that we can actually reevaluate at some point, reevaluate the process or the project rather, and determine possibly a different use of those monies? No? Yes, no?
Laura, I think she's looking at you, Laura.
You do have the flexibility in the bond ordinance to reallocate remaining bond proceeds to another project. I think as I understand Kevin's memo, is staff plans to go back and redesign and identify additional funding sources. That might be one of them. And then it would come back to City Council.
The project as it was identified in the bond.
You would have to, if the city staff was going to recommend a change in how the bond proceeds were going to be spent, the remaining bond proceeds, yes, we would need to come back to City Council and ask them to authorize that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? We've had a motion and a second to reject this resolution. Laura, would you read that resolution, please?
Yes, and just to clarify, I think the motion was to adopt the resolution.
Correct.
Not reject it. So resolution number R-13-21, a resolution rejecting all bids for contract number 19-12 Lawson Garden House project.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We got rejection in there some way. Okay. Item number 2 is a resolution designating Thatcher Group as the sole source provider for dewatering polymer. Art Garrow is on the line for that. Art?
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. I'm happy to be here tonight to request your approval of resolution number R-14-21, a resolution designating Thatcher Group Incorporated of Missoula, Montana as a sole source provider for the use for the polymer used at the wastewater treatment plant. The City of Pullman wastewater treatment plant utilizes polymer to dewater digested sludge and remove excess biological floc from the aeration basins. Hang on just a second. The method of selecting the polymer is time-consuming and labor-intensive. The initial step requires jar testing of each of the polymers from different suppliers for compatibility with sludge the city dewaters. Finally, additional testing, the top performing polymers identified in the jar test includes performing performance testing in the actual treatment process using visual observation, lab tests, and costs. Once testing is complete, staff review the data and determine the polymer providing the best dewatering capabilities and value to the city. The wastewater treatment plant staff went through this exact process in 2012. It was determined that the T-Floc 2621 provided by Thatcher Group Incorporated was the best polymer for dewatering plant sludge. Wastewater treatment plant staff has continued the use of T-Floc 2621 since that time with exceptional results. Wastewater treatment plant staff prefer to continue using T-Floc 2621 until the sludge dewatering equipment upgrade project currently scheduled for 2022 goes online. Thatcher Chemical Company is the only source of T-Floc 2621, and the staff is projecting to exceed $30,000 in polymer expenses for the 2021 calendar year. As such, the city procurement policy requires items exceeding $30,000 in a single budget year be competitively bid. A competitive bidding process would be difficult to award without testing each of the polymers submitted. For that reason and the exceptional results of the T-Floc 2621, polymer, staff recommends sole sourcing TFLOC 2621 to Thatcher Chemical Company. And with that, if you have any questions, I also have our resident expert in the city, wastewater treatment plant supervisor, Trevor Cook, here with me tonight to answer the technical questions you might have.
Hi, Trevor. Thank you for being here. Questions? TFLOC 2621 sounds like something to cheer on, you know? Okay.
All right. Rah.
Yeah, Dan, I see a hand up.
This is just a comment, always an opportunity when we're talking about wastewater treatment to put a plug-in and a PSA for flushable wipes are not actually flushable. So make sure that you know how to dispose of them properly and don't flush them down the toilet because they clog up the works.
And we can also,
that is absolutely true. I had that discussion at my house just last night.
And we also don't flush prescription drugs down the toilet as well, because that we have a place at the police station for all medications to go and be safely disposed of, because that also will foul up as far as all our chemicals and the tests that we have to run on that. So
Rite Aid now has one of those at their pharmacy as well.
Okay. All right. Any other questions aside from cheering on wastewater treatment for the fantastic job you people are doing? I'll tell you that. No questions? Do I hear a motion on this for a sole source?
Move to adopt resolution R-14-21.
We got a motion and a second. Laura, would you read it?
Resolution number R-14-21, a resolution designating Thatcher Group Incorporated as the sole source provider for dewatering polymer.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't know when DFLOC 2621 will come back in our conversation, but we had it tonight.
That's quite the cameo for Trevor.
Well done, Trevor. You got the information correct. Okay. Thank you, Art. Now we go to item number 3, is a motion to authorize staff to apply for a USDA Rural Business Development Grant. Jennifer Heckman is on the line, our economic development person. Okay, Jennifer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, City Council. This is an opportunity to apply for a USDA Rural Business Development Grant for the project to benefit small businesses in Pullman. We were awarded a similar grant last year, and staff believes that this is a good grant to apply for again. For this year, staff recommends focusing this application on a tourism assessment and strategic plan for the city of Pullman. Included in the memo is a draft scope of work subject to additional direction from you this evening. Outcomes of the plan include strategies and a framework to increase tourism for the city of Pullman. And the goal is to identify additional tools, profiles, channels, and metrics that would enhance our ability to increase tourism for the city of Pullman and thereby assist our small businesses. The application draft anticipates a total cost of $50,000 for the plan, including in-kind staff and volunteer time for about 10% of that, leaving about $45,000 for a professional firm to accomplish the scope of work. And that budget was put together from talking to a couple of firms about the draft scope of work and getting an idea from them about what to anticipate in terms of the cost. If we are awarded the grant, the city administrator would oversee a process to procure and choose. The application is due on March 31st. Thank you for your consideration, and I'm available to take questions along with others who have been involved in the process. I think that includes Mike and possibly Laura and possibly others. Thank you.
Okay, questions, comments? Dan, see your hand up.
So, Jennifer, with this type of selecting a firm like this to do this project, kind of what would we envision kind of the feedback process to gather feedback being? Would that be similar to like the BDS project that we did previously for the downtown master plan, where they hold meetings with constituent groups. Kind of what is this kind of project look like in terms of how they develop the proposals?
I think that might, thanks, Councilmember Records. I think it would probably look a lot like what BDS did, but as well, different firms have different ways. Some of them to kind of, would call guests of hotels and ask them what their experiences were. Some of that could be potentially outlined in the procurement process as well, if we have recommendations for how they would gather that assessment. But I would anticipate that it would be interviews as well as potentially sending some people to town and talking to guests as well.
Thanks. I think it's just important that we keep in mind, lots of discussion on this council over the last couple of years about how we gather feedback, making sure that we're asking, broadly for feedback and who we're targeting to get that feedback from, and what is the scope of that feedback process. We really want to get a lot of feedback from the community on what the community wants out of projects like this. So I think that's important just to keep in mind as we think about moving forward with this.
Okay, Pat Wright.
Thank you, Jennifer. Just tell me, what is the desired outcome of this assessment? What exactly are we looking to accomplish here?
We would be looking to accomplish adding tools, understanding additional channels, understanding whether there are additional profiles of tourists that we could be marketing to. And some of this might go into a procurement process. And Mike, I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit, but really looking for an overall assessment and recommendations for how we can enhance our program. And that could take the form of additional tools. It might take the form of recommending a tourism promotion area, which I have to admit, I don't completely know what that is, but I think Laura does. And any other suggestions that would come from a professional firm. So for example, if they identify that there are other opportunities for the city of Pullman, they would provide that in their work and their recommendations. And I don't know that I don't think I can I'm not an expert on tourism, so I am probably not the best person to talk about the total outcomes of this, but in a nutshell, it would be looking for recommendations from an expert consultant on some of our tools. I would expect as well some amount of branding or marketing elements could be included, and that's in the scope of work as well.
So has there been some collaboration with the chamber in terms of being the visitor center and as a result of what they do in terms of tourism activities?
At this point, Councilmember Wright, just for the purpose of putting the application together, no, there has not been.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment? I saw Dan's hand. Dan?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a comment on this type of project in terms of, if this grant is available and we can get some expert advice in this area, I think that would be beneficial to the city and to the council, because I know we've had lots of discussions over the last couple of years about what we want to see out of our tourism promotion, what kind of ideas we have. And, it's been a struggle for us, I think, to have some very clear, specific, ideas of where we're going. And I think this could be something where we are able to get an expert to provide some advice and a clear kind of playbook for us to go forward on some more specific recommendations for what we can do, and maybe some gap areas that we need to improve upon. So I really appreciate you bringing this forward, Jennifer, because I think that's been something that when we've had discussions about tourism promotion, I feel like we have lots of opinions about what may have not gone well in the past or what we'd like to see, but I haven't seen a whole lot of very specific kind of, bullet pointed recommendations of we should be doing these types of things. And I think it is time for us to have some expert advice on, from people that do this for other towns and cities across our country to provide us with some of that feedback.
Nathan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to echo what Dan said. I think it's a great thing. It's important for us to continue to do research, data, in order to make this the best place to live, play, work, all of it. I really appreciate, Jennifer, your proactive approach, and I'm looking forward to this. It's an investment in the thefuture as we're continuing to move forward. So thank you.
And again, we're just talking about applying for this development fund. There's no guarantees like anything, but anything further, Jennifer, on this?
I'm going to actually turn this over to City Administrator Urban. I'm putting the application together, but really this was the mayor's and the city administrator's suggestion to put the application together. So that's my role right now.
Mike?
Yeah. Thank you. And there's not much that I can add to what Jen has presented and what Dan has articulated, because that did come up in meeting as we were working on some things, is trying to put together some sort of tourism playbook to bring more people to our city and enjoy all the great things that we have post-COVID around here, and increase our lodging tax and sales tax of our restaurants and other businesses. One of the things we did incorporate very intentionally into this was an analysis on the tourism promotion area. That's something that council has brought to us in the past as an important process, most particularly Councilmember Chapman. So we thought this is a really great way to roll everything in, get some really good expert advice, and maybe come up with a playbook or a marketing plan out of this.
Okay. And if there's no other questions, do I hear a motion on this motion?
So moved.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. It's a motion to authorize staff to apply for the USDA Rural Business Development Grant. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. Under new business tonight, we checked before we went on the air here tonight, and we had no one that signed up for talking about new business before 5 o'clock at that time. So at this time, City Council will adjourn to an executive session. While the provisions of the Open Meeting Act do not apply to discussions relating to the interpretation or application of a labor agreement, or that portions of a meeting during which the governing body is planning or adopting the strategy or position to be taken during the course of any collective bargaining, professional negotiations, or grievance or mediation proceedings, or reviewing the proposals made during the course of negotiations or proceedings, the City Council is announcing its intention to discuss such matters in executive session. The executive session is expected to last approximately 10 minutes. If it becomes necessary to extend the executive session, someone will return to announce the anticipated additional time needed by the City Council. The Council does not anticipate taking any action following the executive session. Now, with that, stay on here, and we will be brought back into the private session. It is now 9:18. So stay on, and then we'll go into the private session, and then we'll come back out in a public session to adjourn.
Perfect. The council has extended their executive session by 5 minutes.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay,
Second.
I had a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It's 9:36 when we adjourned. All right. Thank you very much for a very productive evening.
Hey, Dee,
Thank you.
thanks for sending me off into no man's land.